Most therapists think that mobility is impossible because of their license, their clients, and their schedule, but almost none of those fears are actually true. I'm Dr. Annie, a licensed psychologist and a digital nomad therapist. I've lived and worked from multiple countries, all while being able to keep my license, my income, and my clients safe. What I want to do today is show you the reasons therapists feel stuck in the United States and why those reasons are completely solvable. So let's dive in. The number one barrier I hear from therapists who think that it's impossible to move abroad while running your US-based private practice is that they think that it's legally impossible. And I think where this comes from is that most, if not all, licensing boards care where the client is located. And I think ever since COVID-19, when everybody was scrambling to know how to respond to everybody needing to do virtual therapy, I think that was the message we always heard, was that you can't see clients that are located in different states. And I think oftentimes therapists equate that to also where you as a therapist matters. And this is mostly untrue for most therapists and most licenses. There are some licensing boards that do restrict where the therapist is, but this is very much the rare circumstance. Most therapist licenses do not care where you're located. They only care that your client is located in the state that you're licensed, but where you are doesn't really matter to them. So if you're a therapist out there thinking that you can't be a digital nomad too because you have a license and you have a US-based private practice, I am so happy to tell you that that is not true, and you can definitely work from wherever you want as long as you reach out to your licensing board and confirm with them that your location doesn't matter for services that you're providing under your license. Now, when it comes to legality, that is probably the most important thing for your private practice, but there are also a couple other questions that can be helpful for you to look through, like your liability insurance, your EHR, and luckily I have a freebie just for you. It reviews the 4 main legal questions that you need to look through and answer before you become a digital nomad therapist. But since I have it detailed there, I'm not going to review them, but definitely access the link below and get that download so you can feel legally secure before you book that one-way ticket. The second barrier that I hear so much from therapists is, how are you supposed to get clients if you're living in another country while they're in the United States? And I am living proof that it is 100% possible to be living in Thailand or Bali or Morocco, which are all the places that I've lived, and regularly get clients reaching out wanting to work with you. Depending on your training, depending on where you're at in the business model of building a private practice, the way your marketing looks can be very different. I know so many people rely on word of mouth, talking to other therapists, really doing that in-person networking. And so if that's you, what I would suggest is you really need to build a foundation of an online marketing strategy. The number one thing I recommend you do is begin to build a website. And as you're building out your website, what really matters, one, is the website copy or the words that are on your website. And secondary to that is how your website looks. Is it professional? Does it have pictures of you? Can the person get a sense of who you are? And does it create a sense of feeling to them that would make them want to reach out to you? Some other ways therapists find clients online is Google My Business, which is essentially having a business profile on the map section of Google. Now, obviously, if you don't have an address, this can be a little bit complicated, but there are ways to work around that, so don't let that stop you. But also therapists go on TikTok, Instagram, YouTube, some type of social media marketing. This isn't for everyone, but there are therapists who have successfully found clients on those platforms. And then obviously directories like Psychology Today, ZenCare, any of those online directories that help connect clients to you. The one caveat I will say is that there are a lot of rules and regulations if you use insurance, or companies like Headway, Rula, Alma. They all can have rules and regulations on where you're physically located, even if your licensure doesn't care. And so if you primarily use those platforms to get clients, you will probably have to consider getting off of them by either getting individually paneled with certain insurances and obviously confirming that they don't care where you're located during the time of service. But that's just a heads up in case that's something you rely on as a therapist. Now, if I reviewed all that and it feels a little bit scary, know that you can definitely reach out to me or some other type of support to help you figure out how to develop online marketing. But know that it is totally possible and you could regularly get clients reaching out to you without having to show up and reach out to other therapists. Obviously, there's probably a way to continue doing that, but know that that is not the only way you have to do it. The last point that I oftentimes hear therapists say is they're worried about not having enough money in savings, like they feel like they can't move to wherever they want to go until they have a certain amount of money in the bank account, or they're afraid that it's going to be too expensive to live abroad. Of course, if you want to live in a more expensive country like Switzerland, England, any country that has a higher cost of living, you obviously are going to need to probably have equivalent to the United States. But there are so many countries that you can move to that have such a better quality of life for so much less. I know so many therapists are moving to Spain or moving to other European countries because the cost of living is so affordable and the quality of life is just so much better there. I personally lived in Morocco, Thailand, and Bali, and all of those places are so affordable to live in. I held a caseload of 13 sessions a week and had plenty of money left over to live my best life. So I didn't have to see 30 plus clients. Like I know some of my friends who live in the DC area, and so many of them have to see so many clients because the cost of living there is so high, not only for their personal life, but their business life, like having an in-person office. And so not only do they have to see more clients, but they probably have a similar take-home pay to what I had for seeing 13 clients because their expenses were just so much more expensive. Like I was living in Morocco, I never paid more than $1,000 a month, and I was right next to the beach. Oftentimes you could see the beach from my apartment, which is unheard of in the United States unless you're living in a closet. And that's not even to speak of food. Food is so much more affordable in other countries. Transportation is so much more affordable. Medical care, hands down, is more affordable. I most recently had my daughter in Thailand and I didn't have health insurance. I was paying completely out of pocket. And my total cost having to have an emergency C-section essentially was less than $5,000, which is to me quite insane because you see people in the United States talking about their hospital bill being $50,000. Obviously they have insurance, but it's wild to me that giving birth costs $50,000 in the United States. But in Thailand, where I was at a private hospital that gave me incredible care, it cost less than $6,000. Anyways, that is all to say to you that your idea that it is too expensive to live outside the United States or you need some kind of buffer or savings is probably based off of your life in the United States. And while yes, it is totally smart to have an emergency savings because that's smart anywhere, anytime, I guarantee you that you can probably move to another country with a very conservative savings amount and be just fine because your cost of living is going to go down dramatically, especially if you choose a country that is very affordable. I personally moved to Morocco with not that much in savings at all, and I didn't need to use it until I went on maternity leave. So let me be living proof that you can successfully move and transition to another country without having a huge savings or financial buffer. Obviously, that gets a little bit complicated when it comes to if you're trying to apply for a complicated visa that requires you to have a certain amount of savings in your bank account. But that has nothing to do with the idea that you need it just to survive or to live. So don't feel like that should stop you from starting this digital nomad lifestyle. I think it's so easy as therapists or as humans to not trust ourselves. And when it comes to moving outside of the United States, that obviously there's so many unknowns. It can be really scary. And so it's really easy for our anxiety to convince us that it's not possible. There are all these barriers, but I guarantee you that finding a way to work through them so that you can finally book that one-way ticket is 1000% worth it. I myself know my life changed so dramatically in the best way possible moving outside of the United States. And I look back and I think that I'm so glad that I didn't stop at all my fears and all my doubts and all my what ifs. And I'm here to try and support you and help you through that as well, because I want you to experience living in another country, especially if that's your dream, because it is honestly everything and more. But that's all I have for you today. If you found this helpful, make sure to like and subscribe for future content all about building a flexible private practice, working online as a therapist, and creating a life that actually feels good. Leave a comment below letting me know what freedom and mobility would look like for you this year. If you like this video, I highly recommend this next one.